We are down to the final 3 games of the regular season for the Lions. Welcome into another edition of the Lions Game Plan. I'm Jacob Seuss, joined once again by Mike Payton from A to Z Sports. This Sunday, Lions-Steelers. Mike, believe it or not, final game at Ford Field for the regular season. Maybe we'll get one in the playoffs. Hopefully we get a Lions game in general. Detroit falls to the Rams on Sunday. This was a game, Mike, that for the first quarter and then 95% of the second quarter was going really well. Lions had a 24-14 lead. The Hutchinson pick was awesome. The Jameson Williams touchdown was awesome. And then after that, the Rams flipped a switch, especially they get the field goal, go into halftime, and then the second half was just complete domination. What did you see from that point that the Lions went up by 10 to the end of the game where it just felt like the Rams just took control of this one and showed why they're at the top of the NFC right now?
You know, Dan Campbell always talks about if there's, one or two different things that went different during a game, then maybe it would have had a different outcome. I think this is the king of that. The Lions, I thought, played a pretty good game in the first, second, and fourth quarters, but the third quarter they made three key issues on offense that just gave it away. They let Jared Goff get sacked, Jameson Williams drops that big ball, and Giovanni Ricci has a holding call that gets a big run from Jahmyr Gibbs taken back. So they only wind up running 8 plays on offense in the third quarter, and the Rams scored on both their drives. I mean, that was the difference. That's really it. I think even in the fourth quarter, the Lions were able to keep the Rams out of the end zone. They scored themselves again, like they got closer, and it just couldn't make it happen. I think that's the third quarter was really the issue.
Yeah, I mean, the first 2 quarters were feel good. You felt like, wow, the Lions really have this team's number. If they can sneak out of LA with a victory, looking really good here. So they sit at 8-6 right now. We'll talk about this Sunday's game, but first I want to talk about the playoff picture. 3 games to go in the regular season, home on Sunday, then 2 road games to end the season. We were just talking, the math guys, the experts have the Lions playoff odds at anywhere between 35 and 42%. I have no idea where they get those numbers. I don't really care. I feel like at this point, looking at the remaining schedule for the Lions, Bears, and Packers, while the Lions are the only one on the outside looking in, I still feel comfortable. Obviously, you have to win your games and get some help, but the schedule lines up here in the Lions' favor.
Yeah, this is a pretty nice little setup for them with a Steelers team that is going to be missing J.J. Watt and hasn't really been super productive despite their win over the Dolphins on Monday, but everybody's beating the Dolphins. And then Green Bay just lost Micah Parsons, Zach Tom, Christian Watson, all in one game against the Broncos, and that's 3 guys that, you just cannot be missing. And if the Lions can win 3 games, and the Packers and Bears both lose 2 games, which is very plausible. The Lions can beat the Bears, the 49ers can beat the Bears, the Bears can beat the Packers, and the Ravens can beat the Packers. The Lions will be NFC North champions. The Green Bay Packers will miss the playoffs.
Which is crazy because we're not only talking about a playoff spot, but the division is still very much in question here. I mean, it seems like all roads lead to that Week 18 game in Chicago being for a playoff spot, maybe even for the division here. But I mean, the Bears schedule, like you mentioned, is tough. The Packers schedule is tough. How confident do you think this team feels at this point when, the outside perception is that, 35%, they're probably done, but they have to still feel confident headed into Sunday?
Well, actually, I talked to Derek Barnes last night, and he basically echoed what you're saying. The feeling in the room is confidence. He actually said everyone is going to laugh at the end of the season when, they'll laugh at all the things that we went through when we get to where we want to be. And they feel pretty confident that they can win these 3 games, and they just got to do it. That's really the end of at the end of the rainbow. They got to be beating these 3 teams, and that's it, man. That's what it's all about. Confidence be damned. You got to win.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the Bears schedule, the Packers schedule doesn't matter if the Lions take care of business. So Sunday at home against old friend Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers. I don't know if I would say this is as a trap game because it's a game that the Lions can lose. I mean, they're favored by 6.5 points. This is a Steelers team that they're tough to judge because on paper they're not really good at anything. They're not really bad at anything, but they're just kind of floating around in the middle everywhere. They found a way to win some games, started the season hot, had that tough stretch in the middle here that allowed the Ravens to get back into the division play. Huge game for them as well. What do you see out of the Steelers team that presents any sort of challenge here? Because I'm struggling to find anything.
Well, I mean, you kind of said it right there. This is a team that can still make the playoffs and can still win their division. And I think when you got a team that has something to play for, that makes them dangerous. But offensively, they have the ability to have those explosive plays with DK Metcalf and Jaylen Warren. These guys are capable of doing some things. They're not the Rams. They're not some of the other teams that the Lions have played this season, but they can make things happen. Aaron Rodgers is, make no mistake, nowhere close to what he once was, but he is still able to get some things done. He can scramble, he can make plays happen, he can be annoying to defenses. So, they have stuff to play for. Defensively, they've been a pretty good pass rushing team, but obviously not having J.J. Watt or Nick Herbig is going to be a big deal for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned some of those guys. I mean, DK Metcalf, on paper, explosive play guy. Jaylen Warren, explosive play guy. But these are guys that have had that explosive play, but also in between have been limited. How big is this opportunity for the Lions defense here? A defense that, it didn't play great on Sunday. We talked about the Hutch Shack. That was huge. But, the Rams had their way for the most part. This feels like an opportunity for the defense to really go out and help get a win here and really put their stamp on this final stretch.
Yeah, I think the big thing for the Steelers is that they're missing their starting left tackle. They're on their fourth guy. They're on their fourth string player at this time, an undrafted rookie. And then they've got their left guard is also hurt with a triceps injury. We don't know quite yet if he's going to play, but then he'll have Spencer Anderson will be his replacement. He's a backup left guard, 7th round pick from last year. So this is where Aiden Hutchinson lines up against. These are the guys on that left side of the offensive line. If those guys got to stop Aiden, it's not going to be easy for them. And they're going to try to double and triple and all the things that they want to do. And that's going to open up one-on-one opportunities on the other side for Al-Quadin Muhammad. He has to take advantage of those. The good thing is on that right side of the Steelers offensive line, they've allowed 9 sacks this year. So this is a good game for the defensive line. Good matchup for them.
And injury-wise, seems like Amik Robertson will be good to go. Any other injury concerns headed into Sunday, or are the Lions fully healthy as far as they can be at this point? Not talking about the guys that are out for the season.
Yeah, at this point, I think the Kirby Joseph stuff is up in the air. We'll see if he practices on Wednesday. The Lions are kind of having a late practice day today. And from there, Thomas Harper is another one. Is he going to be out of concussion protocol? If so, that's going to be big defensively. Offensively, the Lions could get Christian Mahogany back for this game. And having your starting left guard back, when so many of your issues offensive line-wise in the past few weeks have come from that spot, that's huge to get him back at this time.
So the Lions, they're obviously in a spot where they can't lose. But going back to last year, they were also in a similar spot. They weren't playing for their playoff lives, but for the 1 seed and for the division, they could not lose any of those games down the stretch. How much does that help that this is a familiar territory to an extent, knowing that, there's 3 games left, they need to win them all, 1 game at a time, obviously, but, the pressure's on here, even though it's been on for the last couple weeks.
You can't help but, bring up that this is something that the Lions love. They love being in that pressure cooker spot. They love proving people wrong and being the underdogs. And even though they're favored in this game, they're the underdogs for the next 3 weeks. They are the team that nobody thinks is going to make it. They're the team everyone's written off, even though they probably shouldn't. And I think the Lions are going to use that as motivation and use that as fuel, and you have to.
Absolutely, and if the Lions win this game on Sunday, which they're pretty heavy favorites back at home for the final time this season, what does that game look like? Do you think, from a success standpoint, what does that game plan look like for the Lions to just go in Sunday and take care of business?
Well, you got to run the ball and get your offense two-dimensional. The Lions were able to pass the ball pretty well last week, even though they couldn't run. But this game is set up for Jahmyr Gibbs to do some work. The Steelers are kind of weak around the edges, especially if J.J. Watt's not going to play, or excuse me, T.J. Watt's not going to play. I don't know how many times I said J.J. Watt in this video, but it's T.J.
Thank God J.J. Watt's not playing either.
Yeah, if T.J. Watt, and as we know, J.J. Watt's not playing either. Jahmyr Gibbs can go around the edge, get into space, and then if he goes up the middle, their linebacker, Patrick Queen, actually leads the league in missed tackles right now for all defensive players. So this is a Jahmyr Gibbs game. You get that run game going, you set that up for the big pass, and man, this could be a big offensive and defensive explosion for the Lions. This could be a great game for them.
And in talking about the run game, I mean, it was great to see David Montgomery get back into the end zone on Sunday. But of course, we've talked so many times about his diminished role this season. He put something on Instagram, this week, stay the course 8, which had some people talking. Every post on Instagram by a player has some people talking, making things up. Do you think, Montgomery has lost confidence at this point, knowing that it's not a split tandem? His role is not as much as it's been in the last couple of years. Is this just him frustrated with losing and the team's backs are up against the wall, or is this season, the end here, possibly signaling the end here to Montgomery's tenure with the Lions?
I mean, it could be all of that. It really could be. And as I've talked about on here before, the Lions, the way they structured Montgomery's contract, they have an out after this year. They could very well exercise that and move on to whatever the future is, Sione Vaki, or maybe they draft another running back, or I don't know. But I honestly look at that social media post. I've learned in this business for a while, you just can't read too much into these posts.
Yeah.
And I think people want controversy where controversy really isn't there. And while he has had a diminished role, it hasn't really been that big. He's still getting production. He's just, they're not switching on and off. And you just have to understand that when Jahmyr Gibbs is in that lineup and he's running the ball, the offense is just so much different. There's so much more dynamic and so much more powerful. And that's why you just got to go with the hot hand.
All right, so you get Bears Packers on Saturday. One team guaranteed to lose. So a Lions win can make this playoff picture look a whole lot different headed into Christmas with the Vikings. Mike, do they get it done? How do they get it done? Final home game of the season. Do they give the fans one last good taste in their mouth headed into the final 2 road games?
Well, I was right about picking them to lose against the Rams. So. But I'm not going to do that this week. I'm going to go with the Lions getting the win over the Steelers, a big win. I'm going to go 35-21, and I think Jahmyr Gibbs has a big game, and it's going to be huge for people who are trying to get into that fantasy championship.
All right, that would make that 35%, Steve Kornacki, go up much higher than that. We will be off next week before Lions-Rams Christmas, but we will be, Lions-Vikings Christmas. We'll be back with you for the regular season finale against the Bears. But Jacob Seuss, Mike Payton, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Lions Game Plan.